Welcome to our Church360 members quarterly webinar. Hi, my name is Rod Kiles and I am the manager of Concordia Technology Solutions. You can reach me one of two ways. You can reach me via email at rod.kiles@cph.org, and you can reach me by phone at 314-268-1315. I've been with the company quite a few years now, and I do really appreciate the opportunity to serve churches. One little quick note, all the phones and microphones have been muted, so if you have any questions along the way, feel free to post those questions in our question box. It'll be in the control panel that you'll see on the side of your screen. There's a little orange button at the top to expand and collapse that area, so you'll be able to post questions. The person who's going to be in charge of answering those questions is going to be Taylor Brown. She's one of our software support technicians. Her contact information is there, taylor.brown@cph.org and 314-268-1322. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go through the new features that have been released over the last 6, 7, 8 months. Some of them have been covered in a prior webinar, so I'm going to double back on 2 of them, but 4 of them we've actually haven't had a webinar to communicate those with the public. So we've done some web posts and stuff like that, but this is one of our webinars for it. We're working out some new concepts for webinars. We're doing a quarterly webinar, and some of it will be communicating new features. At the end of these webinars, there'll be questions that will pop up, and you can answer those questions, and you can suggest content to cover in some of the latter webinars, but we'll try to host one every single quarter. And depending on the feedback that we receive, we'll cover topics based on the feedback. So let's go ahead and go through our class agenda. We're going to start out with an overview, basically the syllabus for our session. Then we'll jump into the discussion and we'll cover each one of those topics. Then we'll have a question and answer session. So if there's any questions that you guys have at the end of the webinar, I'll answer them, but Taylor will be answering them during the webinar as well. But if you have ones you want me to answer live, you can post those and I'll answer those questions. So we're going to go through some of the redesigned screens. We're going to go through logins, user settings, custom fields, calendars, funds, and smart groups. So those are the 6 views that we're going to go through. We're currently in a stage of development where we're going through all of the customer feedback, and we're redesigning the views to look very similar. We're polishing up some things. We're also going through the process of adding in features based on the feedback that you guys have given us over the years. So some of the things that we'll talk about in some of these views are based off of the things that you guys have said. So please continue to send in the feedback. It helps guide the development phase, and it helps us make sure that we're doing the things that you guys want us to do. Okay, so let me go ahead and, let me mention one other thing. We are recording this webinar. That's always a question that comes up. And we will send out a webinar. We will send out a recording of the webinar at the end of this session. So I'm excited about the new features. I hope you are as well. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and switch the screen, and I'm going to go to our internal Church360 member site. At the top of the window, you'll notice ours says learn.360members.com, and that's our subdomain name. Each church will have their own subdomain name, which will take you to your site, and then you'll be able to log in. Now, anybody who has a login to Church360, it should be a unique login, and logins are how you access the program. So people shouldn't share logins. I'm going to log in as myself, so I'm going to do Rod, and I'm just going to type that in. Then I'm going to type in my password, and then I'm going to click login, and that'll take me to the program. All of the logins are self-managed by the individual who has the login. So if I forget my password, I'll click on Forgot Password, and that will allow me to type in close. That'll allow me to type in my email address and log into the program. But if I know my password, I can just go ahead and log in. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. There we go. And once I log in, I'll land on my preferred screen. So Most people land here on the people screen, and across the top of the window, there's going to be your church logo, followed by people, events, attendance, offerings, and reports. We have moved where you changed the church logo. That's now underneath account settings. So over on the right-hand side, there's these buttons. There's your reminder button, the settings gear, and your profile icon. When you go to settings, you can go to account settings and change your church logo. So if you're wondering where that option went, it's now under account settings. But let's go ahead and let's dig into logins. So underneath the settings gear, it's going to be broken into two sections. There's going to be collections and there's going to be admin. So collections are the different items that support your main menu items here at the top. And then admin are your admin sections. These are sections that are used less often and mostly controlled, mostly used by the administrators of your church. And that's all based on how you guys set up your system. So we're going to go down to logins. And once we click logins, it's going to take us into our logins view. Now, as I go through today's webinar, there's going to be some assumptions that you guys are familiar with certain parts of the program. But if you have questions about any details, post that in there in the question window, and we'll get those answered. Now, you'll notice that the logins view is slightly different. It's just a little bit different, even though it looks real familiar. So it's based on our prior design, but we have logins here at the top. We still have each one of the views labeled, so you know where you're at when you're inside the program. Then there's going to be add buttons at the upper left. There's also going to be action buttons here for the page on the right-hand side. And if there's actions for our records, they'll run down the right-hand side in an action column. So this is going to be the look and feel as we go forward. We hope the kind of like the redesign and pulling things forward allow people to understand the content that's being stored on the page, and it also allows you to apply the actions that are on the page as well quickly. So we're trying to work through those things and make sure we're presenting it in a way that allows the user to quickly complete the task that they want to complete. So the logins view is going to be where you'll find all of the logins for your Church360 members site. And basically your administrator or administrator is going to get together and they're going to invite people to use the program. They're going to assign a login to an individual, and then they're going to assign a role to an individual. And with those roles determine what you can or cannot do within the software. So I'm going to navigate away from here just for a second and then come back to logins to briefly show the roles so that we can see the connection. So there's going to be the gear here at the upper right, and then there's going to be roles. And roles are a collection of rights or permissions within the software. We have some roles set up inside of the program. Your administrative team will set up the roles as well, and you can state what people can or cannot do within the software. So these are grouped together, categorized together: people, admin, communication, events, attendance, offerings, and collections. And by creating a new role, and you can actually see the contrast between our logins view and kind of our old design here, like the add role button is here at the upper right instead of at the upper left. The navigation is a little bit different. The action buttons all aren't centered or grouped together, so it looks a little bit different. But you can come in here and create roles and then specify what people can and cannot do in the software. So a neat thing to mention about the roles is we've added in a few roles recently that you may want to take advantage of. So we're going to be creating logins here in just a second, and you may want to be like, oh, well, maybe I want to kind of parse out the access to the software a little bit differently. So we've added in a handful of roles, and as we continue to go through the development phase of adding in new features and polishing the software, we know that there's people who want a granularization. I don't know if that's a word, but they want the permissions to be more granular. And if you have feedback on that, please send it in. We've had some feedback on it so far, and when it comes to the development phase, you know, the more people that suggest something, that increases the likelihood of something happening. But also one person can suggest something and it's a really good idea, and then we head down that road as well. But we definitely want to hear from you. So some of the changes that we've made inside of here, we've renamed the general settings to the account settings. We've added the communication section, so you can send emails and can send text messages. That used to almost be like a default within the program. So those two have changed. And we've added in can manage custom fields. So I'll be talking more about custom fields here just in a second. But when it comes to parsing out your access, you can now leverage those changes. So you can leverage send emails, text messaging, and custom fields as well. So let's go back to logins. So I'll go to the gear and go to logins. And to add a login, you'll click add login here at the top, and it'll pop a row into your grid or the space below here. And you'll select the name of a person who's in the software. So I'm going to invite my associate here, Taylor Brown, to the software. And you have to be a person inside the program, and you also have to have a personal email address in order for you to be able to invite them. So you'll select their name, they have to be in the program, so they'll be in the drop list. And then you can select the role that you want to assign them. So on the other screen, you had a list of your roles where you're parsing out access to the software. Then I'm going to say that Taylor's an administrator, and then you can click save. And what that'll do is that will send an invite to that person. And Taylor, you can accept that invite if you'd like. But at that point, it'll say pending, and once the person accepts the invite, then the pending little tag or label will disappear at that point in time. So as long as it's pending, they won't have access, but once they accept, then they'll have the access that you've specified. And then that's how they'll be able to access the program. And you can invite, you know, as many people as you like to the software. You can specify certain roles. So it could be, hey, they are administrators, or they're financial secretaries, or they're just a general user, they're a part of the outreach team. They just have the ability to access and enter offerings. You can really fine tune it to get the access that you want. Once you've set somebody up inside the software, what you can do is you can edit their access. So say I have Jordan here and he's doing one task and I want to switch him over to another task. So then I could use our action buttons here on the right-hand side, click edit, and then I can change the access that they have. So I can add in additional access by selecting a different role. Say I want him now to also be able to enter in attendance, or I could select multiple roles. So when it comes to logins, you can have access to one or more roles. It's a lot easier to give a person less and then kind of parse out a little bit at a time and give them more than to give everybody more, then have to go through the conversation of, hey, well, I'm not giving you rights to this part of the program now. So less is definitely more when you're inviting people to access the program. But once you've selected the roles, you'll click save, and then that will give that person additional access to the program if you've added a role. And you can also take the roles away by using the little X here as well. So the other thing that I wanted to show in this view is the ability to reassign a login. So for our users who might have a test record in the program very early on in their life cycle for using Church360 members, they may have a record in the program that is a test record. So that record doesn't have all of their baptisms, confirmations, wedding information, address. And if that's the case, you can reassign a login from one person in the program to another person who's in the program. So you can click the drop-down box, and I have more than one Tim Burks in here. So this was the test record. I'm going to click on the other record, and then once I click save, Do you want to change the login name? This will not change the email roles or password for this login, It'll only change the name associated with the login. So this is the person who's in the membership data of your program and the people view of your program. So yes, change login name. And then even though it's the same name, Tim, it's now assigned to a different person. So it's just assigned to the correct person. And then what you can do is if you want to, you can archive the extra record and then get rid of that. You can then delete it if you'd like to and get rid of that record. I won't talk about archiving in this video, but that's a possibility there when you're trying to clean up your list and clean up your people records and get it down to the people that you want. Okay, so I guess there's one more upon my one more. There's the delete buttons here on the right-hand side. And if somebody doesn't have access to the program anymore, you can use the blocked role. So if Tim no longer had access, you could change it to blocked and take off administrator and then save it. And blocked would be no rights to the program. Some people go that route. Some people use the delete button, and then that will delete the person from the system. That means they will no longer have access, and unless you invite them back to the program, they would not have access. So if you want to delete the login, you can delete the login. Now, Tim's one of our technicians here, so I'm not going to delete his login, but deletion is definitely a thing within logins. We don't typically suggest deleting records, but when we're talking about access to the church information, membership records, attendance records, offering records, you definitely want to take security into mind and keep this list clean. And when people leave the church, most likely going to another church, you take their access away. I'm going to say cancel and keep, then we can go from there. Okay, so from there, the next item, let me scroll down my notes here just a little bit. Let's go to user settings. So I was talking about, hey, each person should have their own login to the program. Logins allow you to access the software. But when each person has their own login, they also have their own user settings. And those can be accessed only by the person who's logging into the software. You click the icon here at the upper right. I've got my picture assigned to my person record, my profile view. So my little photo shows up here. And then I can go to user settings. And user settings are going to be my user settings. So when I log into the software, these are my settings. And I can control parts of the program that are specifically designed for me. So from there, I have my login email. So when I logged in, you guys noticed I typed Rod, R-O-D. And then I typed in my password. So I have a username. The username can allow you to type in fewer characters than typing in the whole email address. Some people have really long email addresses nowadays, and having a username allows you to speed up that login process. So you can definitely have a username. You can also have a default view. Now, most people land on people, but you may have a different task inside of the software. You may, your goal or your task might be to enter in offerings. So why go to the people view just to then click on offerings here at the top when you can just go to offerings? So you can select the view that you want to land on when you go into the program. And if, say, you're a ministry leader and the first place you go is reports, you can jump straight to reports and not go to people. But you get to make that call by going to user settings. So I'm going to leave mine on people. There's a couple more here. There's receive pastoral visit notifications. For those people who do pastoral visits, you can opt into the email notification. You'll receive a notification, and it just slipped my mind. You receive a notification when the event, like the day the event is going to happen, and when you sign up or you create the event. So there's two places that you receive those notifications. It's a neat feature. I don't think we talk about it a whole lot, but it really is a neat feature. And then you can also change your password as well. So, and if you make a change, so say I call this Rod Kyles, you'll get this message down here at the bottom. you have made one unsaved change. Save now, and then it'll allow you to change it. So this bottom bar that appears, you'll have the ability to use that bar, and we may use that paradigm in other parts of the software as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is from here, the next feature I want to talk about after user settings is custom fields. So custom fields have been in the program for a while. It's one of the original features. We definitely knew that there were going to be fields that users were going to natively want in the software. First name, last name, address, phone number, email address. Fields that are unique to churches, baptisms, confirmations, deaths, weddings. Those may be in other software as well, but you definitely want them in a church management software. So there's fields that are in the program that are basically default and core to what you do with church management. But there's also going to be fields that are unique to your church, and the custom fields allow you as a user, as an administrator, not a user, but as an administrator, to set a piece of information specifically or select a field for a specific piece of information. So custom fields allow you to specify a piece of information to be stored in the software. So to access custom fields, you'll go to the gear and go to custom fields. We used to have custom fields as part of our general settings, which we've retitled account settings, but now we've cut that section out of account settings and put it into custom fields. We're really excited about this one. The redesign of custom fields gives us the ability to allow people more option, more flexibility, and even more restrictions at this point. So we've added add buttons here at the top. We have the actions here on the right-hand side. We've added the number of people who are part of that custom field. So like we have allergies here, and we've got 4 people with a hyperlink. We've even added roles so that custom fields can be more private. You may, it may be a custom field that's okay for everyone to see who has access to the program, or it may be a custom field that is a little more sensitive and you don't want everybody to see that piece of information. So we've added the option of visibility. So it's visible to everyone, or it's visible to one or more roles. So let's go through and let's add in a couple of custom fields. Okay, so the first custom field I'm going to add is First Communion. So I'm going to click the add button here, and there's different types of custom fields. So, and I guess it's type can be used in several different ways. So you could say, hey, there's household types, there's person types here at the top, and then there's household types. But there's also types down here. So let's say First Communion. And then under type, you click the drop-down box, there's a text field, a date field, a list field. There's a link, which is like a hyperlink outside the program. And then there's also person link, which links you to another person within the software. So we'll go through the date field, link, and person link, since those are the ones that kind of make sense for this demonstration. So we'll say First Communion date, and then we can say who it is visible to. And First Communion probably isn't that sensitive, so we can say, basically, if you say administrators only, like you don't select something, then it will say everyone. But if you select a role, so if I said pastors, then it would be available to pastors and administrators at that point in time. So if you leave the field blank where it says administrators only, then it's everyone. And if you select a role, then it's administrators and the role that you selected. Oh, there's everyone there as well. Why would we leave that blank? I'm going to click save. Oh, it does say administrators only. These are relatively new. I'm still getting my footing on that. So I'm going to switch this to everyone. I'm going to restate that as well so it's in the recording. So when you go to select your visibility, administrators only is default, meaning only the administrators can see it. If I select a role, it'll be accessible by administrators and that role. And if I want everyone to see it, I have to select everyone from the drop list. So I'm going to say First Communion is visible to everyone who has access to the software. Once I set the field up, I can edit that and make a change if I'd like. We have an additional option in this view. There's inactive, so you can deactivate a custom field and you can activate a custom field. And then there's also delete. And we're going to go through those here in just a second. So I've added in First Communion. Everyone is able to see it, and it'll be accessible throughout the program. So creating a custom field means that you'll see it on the people view or the household view, depending on which one you add. But it also means that you'll see it on the profile view as well. So it'll be person profile or household profile. It'll also be accessible in smart groups. So if you create First Communion, it's a date, you start adding in First Communion dates, you'll be able to filter your records and find those who have a First Communion date. So there's a lot of power when it comes to custom fields. The administrators can specify this as being a field and allow users to utilize and view this information, but you can also use it in other parts of the program to fine-tune your information and just find the people that you want. So I added in First Communion. I'm going to add in another custom field. So I'm going to do confirmation verse. And with confirmation verse, I'm going to call this a link. And this will be a hyperlink that jumps me outside of the program. And confirmation verse is one where you can link to one of the Bible websites. You could do Bible Gateway, or you could link to a Dropbox link, or you could link to a file that you've uploaded somewhere. So there's lots of use for link, but I think confirmation verse is a nice example here. And then I'm going to say everyone for that as well and click save. And the third one I'd like to do is a person link. And I'm going to say this one is prayer partner. And with person link and its ability to add a hyperlink to jump you over to another person in the software, prayer partner is a good example that, hey, this is the prayer partner for this person. You could click their link and then jump over to their record. And I'll go over to the profile view and add in a few of these records here in just a second. Okay, and let's say prayer partner, let's say that's just viewed by pastors. And when I say pastors, that also means administrators as well. So we've added in these three fields. You'll probably notice here on the left-hand side that we have the 6 little dots, which is the, I guess it's like the universal signal for being able to sort. And the sorting that you do here allows you to change the order in the profile view. So say we want First Communion closer to the top, and we want our confirmation view below it. Let's say confirmation view closer to the top, then First Communion, then the rest of our items here at this point. So at that point, then this changes the order throughout the program. So I'll click the gear, actually click the gear. I'm going to go to people here at the top. That's going to take me over to the people view. Let me refresh my screen here. Okay, then those fields that I've added are going to show here in the people view, like there's confirmation verse, and if I scroll over further, I'll see First Communion. But then if I click on somebody's name, then that's going to take me into their profile, and I'll be able to see those fields over here in the order that I sorted in the custom fields view. So confirmation verse, First Communion, allergies, employer, person form link, and prayer partner. So I have a hyperlink here. I'm just going to copy this out of my spread, out of my notes. Copy. And then I'm going to say confirmation verse, and then I can just paste this in here. It does want you to put the HTTP at the beginning. Mine already has it in there, so it's okay. Oh, let me get rid of that bullet though. There we go. And then I can click outside the box, and then that will save my confirmation verse. If I click on the hyperlink or this little box with the arrow on it, that'll take me over to the website where I can see the verse at that point in time. If I want to change that field, then I have to make sure not to click on the hyperlink or the box, and I just have to kind of click here around the corners or the edges to be able to edit that field. So that's how you can add in the link information at that point in time. For a prayer partner, I'll click that box and I can just select somebody else here in the system. So I'm going to say Tommy Williams, and then click outside of it. Then I can click on the link, and then that'll jump me over to that person at that point in time. So that's how person links work. And person links is, the thought is there's other relationships in the church that are not family. So you'll be able to use person link to represent those relationships. There's with your family, it's marriage or blood, so wife, siblings, children, grandkids. But with person link, it could be another relationship that you're trying to connect to. Okay, let's go back to our custom fields. So I'll go to the gear and go to custom fields. And with custom fields, we've added in custom fields. The add process for households is the same as the add process for our person records. Then edit is edit. So say I typed in prayer partner and I wanted to make a change. Actually, a better example would be like, hey, say I have elders and I get a new elder. So I can click the pencil and then I can add in the new elder. So I could say Bill Thompson. And then I can click save, and then Bill Thompson will now be an option in the drop list for our list. Okay, there is a message from Carrie. Hi, Carrie. Can you explain what text means? Is it for entering words? Yes, so text is, and I'm gonna deviate just for a second, go to people and go back to Dave here. And text is literally just for entering text. So like we have the inner allergies here, and say Dave is allergic to peanuts, NSAIDs, and I want to say flying insects, like he's allergic to bees or something like that. So you can just free flow type in the text that you want, and that's what the text field would show. Then when you went back to people, you would actually just see that information there. So, but I think that also highlights why you may want to assign a role to a custom field. Dave may not want everyone to know that he has these allergies. This may be sensitive information, and if people log in, he may just want pastor to know it, or he may just want the church office to know it and not the financial secretary. So, having the roles allows you to, from there, kind of parse down the visibility of that information. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, let's go back to custom fields, and I showed edit and added an item to a drop list. Then I may have a field, and at some point that field may fall out of use. I'll have a couple of choices at that point in time. Employer is one of those fields that people will add to the system, and it may fall out of use. And when it comes to custom fields, you have the ability to add as many custom fields as you like. I would say when it comes to that, be cautious, be measured in your approach. You go in and you add 100 fields, it'll be in the program, then somebody will be like, why is there all this information in the program? Or why is this information not valid or important? So you definitely want to take a measured approach to adding in custom fields and making sure that there's value. You want to discuss it with your team. And decide, hey, is there value in recording this? And should we move forward with that? And hey, you decide that it is valuable, boom, go ahead and move forward with it. At some point, it may no longer be valuable, and you may say, hey, I need to decide, do I want to deactivate or delete? So deactivate hides it throughout the software. So if I take employer and I deactivate it, my little button turns from, I guess, a white background to kind of a darker or burnt orange background. At that point, it won't show up in your views, and it won't show up in your smart groups. It won't show up in your profile and household views. So it'll be hidden at that point. You'll also notice how the pencil becomes grayed out at that point in time. And with the pencil grayed out, you can no longer edit it. So you have to reactivate if you want to edit. But deactivate and archive are going to be some concepts that we roll out more as we redesign these views. Then there's also delete. Do you want to delete employer? There's one person associated with the custom field, and there are 0 smart groups, the custom field. The thought process with these new windows is there's definitely consequences when it comes to deleting information. The technicians are always going to try to get you not to delete information, or make sure you're sure that this is the course of action you want to take. There's ways that you can delete information, and it just cannot be undone. And the programmers mentioned that here. This cannot be undone. You know, we delete permanently when you say delete in situations like this. It can be re-added, but you just want to make sure that deletion, it's something you want to do because it's forever. So I'm just going to leave mine as archived, and then I can come back and restore that if I want. But there is the option for delete. Okay, so those are custom fields. Let's go ahead and, I actually have one note here that I wanted to mention. I talked about the places where custom fields appear throughout the software. I talked about people, smart groups, the profile views. We've added custom fields to the attendance view, the attendance detail view. So when you add your custom fields, you can include those. And I don't know if you would include First Communion in your attendance view, but there may be data that you have in a custom field that you want to see in your attendance detail view. And we've added custom fields to this view. So there's options there. And some people don't know that there's fields that you can add into the view and fields that you can take away from the view. So this performs a lot like the people view. So you can say, hey, I do want that information, or I don't want that information. And I've seen people cite, this is like a little bit of a warning, where they've turned off the graph. And after they've turned off the graph, it's just kind of gone at that point in time. And they don't know how to get the graph back. So you should go to columns and go to graph and turn that back on if you want to see the graph and kind of see a pattern of people's attendance. So there's a lot of value in the graph, but if you turn it off, it's almost out of sight, out of mind at that point in time. It does take up a lot of space, but if you have it off and you want to see it, you can turn it back on. Okay, so that is the last note that I had for custom fields. So after custom fields, let's transition into calendars. So calendars are a way to Angela asked a question, and since I'm just starting with calendars, I'll go ahead and answer that. Hey, Angela, when they are deactivated, we're talking about custom fields as the context here. When custom fields are deactivated, can they be moved to archive so they are not showing in the custom fields list? At this point in time, when they're deactivated, they just kind of reside in the list. I was thinking something very similar when I was preparing for this webinar last night, like why are those not hidden? But that topic never came up during the development phase, but we will add in feedback on like hiding those fields. And we review all the feedback and we move forward with that. But that's a very good point. They do show, they just kind of reside at this point in time. Okay, so calendars are a means or a way of grouping church events together. So that's the core purpose for calendars. So you go to the gear and you go to calendars, and our system has an events area. It also tracks other types of events as well, but events are going to be church-wide events that are taking place, and calendars can group those together. We have several types of calendars here within the program, and we've added a calendar type. That's something that's new to the software, and the type is going to allow us to better understand what this calendar is going to be used for. So when we're talking about calendars, we're saying, hey, this is an anniversary calendar. This is a custom calendar. This is a pastoral visit calendar. The calendars have purposes. They have a purpose for existing, and the type is going to help explain that purpose. And when it comes to calendars, you can also apply a smart group. And that's what we see here when we see members with the little light bulb. The light bulb represents smart groups. So this baptism calendar is an anniversary calendar, and it's also only showing our church members. So the anniversary calendars, they typically represent significant life events. So when we're looking at it, we're going to say, okay, well, these anniversaries are baptisms, birthdays, confirmation anniversaries, unfortunately, deaths, and then there's also wedding anniversaries. So those are going to be anniversaries. There's the custom calendar, and these custom calendars are actually unique. They're also default calendars provided by the programming team. Every church has worship. Every church has some type of education, Sunday school or Bible study. That's what the education calendar is for. Then there's also fellowship at the church. So these are default calendars, and we're calling those custom. Then there's also pastoral visit, which is also a default one, but it's not quite the same as worship, education, and fellowship. You know, it's one of those calendars where it's usually like your ministry leaders and your pastors, associate pastors, assistant pastors, who are going to be viewing that calendar. So we've kind of set that aside, and we've given it its own type of pastoral visit. Of the four that I just mentioned, worship, education, fellowship, and pastoral visit, those cannot be deleted. And actually, these anniversary calendars cannot be deleted as well. They're in the system, and they're permanent because these are things that churches do. Like you're going to have baptisms at your church. So these are in the system, but you can add your own calendars as well, and that's what the add button here at the top allows you to do. So we're going to add just one custom calendar here, and the calendar we want to add and demonstrate, I'm going to click the add button up here and then show the drag and drop and also show the action buttons. But once I click add, it's going to take me down here to the bottom, and the one I want to add is First Communion. So we added the custom field First Communion, and now we've added the ability to create a anniversaries calendar that's tied to a custom field. So there may be other anniversaries, maybe there's installations at your church that you want to track, but you can create these anniversary calendars that are tied to a custom field, and then you can also specify a smart group as well. So this could just be members as well. Members. And then you can select a color. We're familiar with the colors. And then you can specify who can see this information. So people have asked about First Communion, and hey, how come that's not a field within the program? Well, now, well, not every church keeps track of First Communion. So now for those churches that do keep track of First Communion, you can create a custom field. That custom field will show up in the profile view, and you can enter in the information. And then at that point, you can actually see this on your calendar on the date that the significant life event, the First Communion, took place. So then I'm going to say save, and then that's going to save my First Communion calendar. And with this drag and drop, I didn't say this earlier, but one of the things we wanted to do was to allow people to specify their order. Maybe you want to put your most used calendars at the top, and to allow that to happen. Or allow people to be like, hey, I just want mine alphabetical, you know, but to give both of those options. So with drag and drop, you can do alphabetical. You can also do your own custom order. And we have some more thoughts that we're working through to make ordering records in the software easier and customizable by user. So this is just one of the early on steps. You can drag and drop these calendars into position. Then when you're going throughout the software, you'll be able to see the calendars in a different order. And we've done this view, and there'll be some more rolling out of ordering throughout the software. But right now you can see it here, and in the future you'll be able to see it in more places throughout the software. So you do have the ability to edit your calendars. So if I make First Communion and there's a change I want to make, say I had a typo or something in there, then I could, you know, update the name and make a change, or say that there's, let me cancel this, let me go to pastoral visits and say, you know, for those that have pastoral visits, you can now go here, and right now for most people it's probably everyone, but you can go in here and switch it to pastors or a different group and then save that change. So it may be in here, but you may want to change, you know, who can access this calendar, who can see this calendar. So, and you'll see these calendars when you go to events, and then calendars here at the top, and you'll notice how my worship is up here, weddings is down, First Communion is down here at the very bottom. Let me refresh my screen. Okay, so that's correct. And then, you know, like you could put all your popular ones at the top if you wanted to, but this is where your calendars are going to show. And then as you check and uncheck boxes, then you'll just see the information that relates to the calendars that you have selected. Okay, so I'm going to go back to calendars here. So I'm going to go to the gear and go to calendars, very top. Okay, then we've added this link here. This allows you to jump over to that calendar and jump over to the events view and just see those events. So we're really happy that we can now present it in that way. It allows you to kind of just get to the information that you want to see. So we talked about edit. There is the option for deactivate. So if we get this going and then we're like, maybe we should delete it or maybe we should deactivate it. In this view, you can view and hide deactivated calendars. So like we had a business planning calendar, it's deactivated. Say First Communion falls out of use, it's out of date, we could deactivate that as well. And then we can hide those deactivated calendars or show those deactivated calendars. So there's a couple options there, and it does take the deactivated ones and put them at the bottom. So there's some power in the changes that are here, and there's some you know, additional functionality that you can use and access from this view. Now the view isn't the most popular view, but maybe it should be more popular. Okay, so those are calendars. Underneath calendars on my notes, the next, oh, actually I had one last note here. We highly suggest hiding instead of deletion. So if I was to delete this First Communion, then all that information deletes with it. So we suggest hiding instead of deleting. You don't want to delete all the events. So like if you have a worship calendar and you delete it, it deletes the events that are tied to it. So you want to be careful with that. Okay. But I would say deleting First Communion would not delete the First Communion data. It would just delete the events that are on the calendar. Okay, so let's talk about funds. So you can go to the gear and you can go to funds. And funds are reasons why people give to the church. They allow the financial secretary to track and allocate church offerings. So this is one of the views that we made a few additional changes to. So let me scroll up the screen just a little bit. And probably you could say we made the most changes to this view, even if it's only a couple more. But here at the top, you have funds, and then it has the year-to-date amount. And you can add up all of the amounts here, and then that's your year-to-date amount. So this is now a printable report that allows you to view how much was given to each one of the funds, and then also see the total that was given to the church for the current time period. There are the add buttons at the top. There's add fund, which allows you to create a new fund. There's add fund category, and then there's merge funds together. There's also print and export. Adding a new fund is going to insert the fund into your list and put it down here at the bottom. So we'll go ahead and add a fund, and then we'll work through our actions related to the fund. So I'm going to say add fund, and my first fund I'm actually going to do is the scholarship fund, and you can give it a number. The beauty of the numbers is they help speed up your ability to enter data into the software. So I'm going to pick number, let's say 22, since that one looks like it's not used. But then I can select a color, and you'll notice that this color box is a little bit different. We are changing the color palette within the software. So most of the colors are going to be a little bit darker, and that's because we put white on top of the color. So it'll allow us, allow everyone to be able to see those bubbles when it has a color. Like we're getting rid of yellow and some of the lighter colors, and it's darker colors, and it'll be a white font on top of it. There's also exclude from statements and non-deductible. The exclude from statements and non-deductible, those are going to be individual choices, but you can use them together. So let me look at my watch here real quick. So if you have something in the system that you don't want to print on a contribution statement, you simply say exclude from statements. If you have something that you want to include on a statement, but you want to designate as non-deductible, you'll say non-deductible. And you can use them together if you'd like. So we have VBS fees up here. When it comes to giving to the church, if you receive something in return, then it's going to be something that's non-deductible, and therefore you may not want it on a contribution statement. If it's something that you give and you want on the contribution statement, you just want to say, hey, well, it's non-deductible. I don't want people to accidentally double dip, saying, hey, they received something from the church, or they had a different form that they're going to turn in to get a tax deduction with that other form, then you can say non-deductible. We just don't want there to be any confusion or somebody to turn in a form, hit the jackpot, get audited, and then be in some kind of trouble. So we want to do the right thing early on, designate it appropriately, so when we print these contribution statements, either quarterly or annually, then they print out correctly. So scholarship fund, we're going to say that that is on statements and it's deductible, but say you wanted to track IRAs inside of the program. So you put in an IRA, you could have a number, and numbers aren't required, but they do speed up entry. And then you could say non-deductible. It would show up as non-tax deductible, even though IRAs are tax deductible, but you're expecting to receive a form from your whoever did the distribution, and then you would use that form to file for your tax deduction when you did that. So I'm going to go ahead and say save. And you could also exclude it. You know, you could simply say, hey, it's on your other form, you shouldn't have it here. But I think most people are going to want that on there. So Donna asked the question, can the numbers be changed after creation? And that is correct. The numbers can be changed after you create the account. And Cheryl asked, can you add a starting amount on a new fund other than zero? And you cannot add a starting amount or a starting balance. And then Todd, I'll show categories just in 2 seconds here. So I'm going to add one more fund. Oh, actually, I'll skip those two since those are similar to the ones we have in here. And I'm cutting it a little close now. I'm probably going to be about 5 minutes over, so I'm warning everybody in advance here. But we'll send out the recording if you have to drop off. So categories, I'm going to say add a fund category. And you'll notice here at the top that uncategorized is, it's kind of like our default fund. Any fund that was in the system, we took and we dumped them all into uncategorized. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click add fund category up here. This plus button down here, let me say I might run a little bit longer than 5 minutes because I really want to get all this material in. But this add button here is to add a fund to this category. So we have, I'm going to say ministries. It's an example. So we have men's ministry, music ministry. I'm going to say add a category, and we're going to say ministries. Okay, and then click save. That's going to put my men's ministry down here at the bottom. And then what I can do, I'm going to refresh my screen here. Okay, what I can do then is I can drag and drop. I can use these buttons here to put that into the area. Music ministry, okay. And music ministry, young adult ministry, women's ministry, men's ministry. And that probably makes sense right there. So you can drag and drop all the ministries, and now we have $710 in here. And then uncategorized, we have $36,000. So the idea is that you'll be able to group money together. It kind of gives you a way of organizing and kind of looking at the areas where you're receiving money. And I think there's going to be a lot of benefit. Another example in my chart of accounts, in my fund list, this is not chart of accounts, in my fund list is I could have outreach. And then I could drag my outreach items into, let's see, international outreach. And then I could drag those items down here. You can also rearrange your categories as well. Like you can move them around and reposition them. So this is the way that the items would show throughout the software. So really everything should be in a category if you start using categories. Like you could have them all uncategorized, but if you categorize some of them, you really should be trying to categorize them all. That'll give you the ability to kind of see things and total them together. And if you have an uncategorized dollar, it kind of throws things off at that point in time. But you can drag and drop and reposition these into a order that makes sense. So mine's kind of haphazard with the test data, but you can control how this is going to view and how this is going to look, and then you can print the report and hand that off if you need to hand that off. You can also export it to Excel if you'd like at that point in time. So these are editable, so you can edit it and make changes. Something that you had designated one way 1 year, you really don't want to change it, but you may elaborate on it as well. And you know, names shouldn't change too much because you have the history, but you may want to, you know, get a correct name or something that better represents the funds that are inside of that fund. So you can edit. You can also archive. Once money has been put in, I'll archive this one since it's at the top, but once money has been put into a fund, you can't delete that fund, but you can archive that fund so that it is no longer seen throughout the software. So there's definitely going to be times where programs and funds that you've used in the past are no longer a thing at your church. And at that point in time, you can archive it and it'll hide down here at the bottom and you can collapse it. But you should not be archiving things that have a year-to-date amount because then you won't be able to see it throughout the software. So you definitely want, if it has a balance, then don't archive it at that point in time. So if it doesn't have any money in it ever, like this IRA I just added, you can delete and it'll just delete it out of the list. There's no tethers at that point in time. So you can delete stuff that doesn't have any money, but you can only archive funds that do have money. Okay, let me show merge funds, and we'll definitely get to any questions that Taylor doesn't answer. But merge funds allows you to merge funds together, and I think memorial is a good example. So like if you have a memorial fund, and then sometimes people will create memorial funds and they'll have people's names on it. So memorial for Angela Smith or something like that. And then you'll have a bunch of memorials in the system. And most likely, if you're using this software, you're going to categorize all of your memorials together. But at some point, the list can become extensive and they're just kind of lingering on at that point in time. So then you can merge funds together. If you say, hey, we really just want one unified memorial fund, what you can do is you can say Memorial Angela Smith and merge that into memorials and then merge selected funds. And that'll allow you to merge two funds together. So I think lots of times people will expand out their funds, but then there's some times where you need to contract as well. So we'll be down just to that one memorial fund. The one for Angela is no longer there. So, but that's how you merge funds together. Those are all the action buttons on this view. You guys may have a few other questions that I haven't shown here, but post those in there and I can double back here. We'll still have question and answer time. So then there's funds, and the last one is smart groups. So smart groups are an important part of church management software. Everybody's going to have some type of filtering mechanism within the program. So when you have smart groups, basically you're creating these criteria lines, and you can see them here, who have not attended in the last 2 months. So you're going to have these criteria lines that are going to allow you to find people within the software based just on the criteria that you have. So we've made the change here as well. We have add group at the top. We have our action buttons over here on the right. We have our people, which allows us to jump over to our people view. We've added in creator. So like it has my face here, I created this one last night. And then we also have, like if it's one of our default ones, members, we're saying that, hey, Church360 members is the creator of that. So to add a smart group, we'll say add group. And then down at the bottom, and we're going to do our standard voting members smart group. And each church kind of has their own view on voting members, but you can add multiple traits and you can add different lines. It's going to be people who are living, people who are members, and you can say people who are baptized, people who were confirmed. You may add in something like people who have attended, and you could say worship or one of our other calendars, and then you could say in the last number of period that you want. You could say, hey, in the last year, 2 years, whatever time period. But you could also add in age. You could say, hey, age is greater than 17. So you can create multiple lines. There's quite a bit that can be done within smart groups, and they kind of build upon. So you're saying who, and then it's and. And there's even a way to do it or operator as well. Then there's also a custom description. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to say voting members. And it'll build a description based off of your trait lines or criteria lines. But if you want a description, voting members to be used when sending a newsletter. And then you can say save, and then that would be your description. This would overwrite your, I guess, program calculated description at that time, your default description. It'll override it and kind of give someone else an idea of when to use it. So the description is communicating quite a few things. So it's communicating, in some cases, what's the people who are going to be part of the subgroup, the SMART group, or it could be communicating information to one of your coworkers when to use the SMART group. So that's the idea behind the custom description. Okay, you can inactivate these. So some people are just going to deactivate and they're going to hide them. You can delete them. Deleting a SMART group, there's going to be times where they haven't been used in a while and it's just clutter. And then you can go through and delete those from the system and they just delete. And basically it's just getting rid of the item from the list. And then of course you can always edit. Excuse me. But that's SMART groups. We have a lot of additional changes and enhancements to SMART groups. So I kind of rushed through this a little bit, but we just basically changed this view. But SMART groups is one of the areas where we have a lot of changes on the way to kind of improve it and make it easier, because it's necessary to be able to filter and find the people that you want. A common question came up from Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Why would you use SMART groups versus tags? So SMART groups and tags at times can provide the same functionality. Really good question there. So SMART groups allow you to find people based on traits. I like to think criteria, but based on traits. So when I created the voting members SMART group, I was like, hey, they need to be members and baptized and they had to have attended, like I'm creating this criteria. So usually you'll use SMART groups when you're trying to create something to find a list of people who could be changing and varying along the way. You may not know who the individuals are. That's when you would create a SMART group. You're just kind of trying to find the people. Tags, it's a similar concept, and those that have been using the software for a while understand. Tags are going to be labels that you basically affix to a person's record. Both of them can help you find individuals, but you have to know, somebody has to know at the church who that choir member is to give them the tag so that you can find that person. So if I don't know who the choir member is and somebody else hasn't applied the tag to that person's record, then we wouldn't be able to know who that, oh, awesome, we wouldn't be able to know who that person is. Thanks, Rachel, appreciate it so much. Okay, so that is the last redesign item that I had to share. So let me take a look at the questions here, and Taylor looks like she's kept up pretty good on the questions. Let's see here. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Here we go. Okay, it looks like Taylor has answered all the questions. So, oh, here we go. One just came in. Hi, Donna. So Donna asked the question, can a SMART group be created for a birthday anniversary during a current month and not a specific month? The answer is no, and I always hate to be like, no, the answer is no. But this is one of those things that we're looking at for our enhancement to smart groups. So right now, when you do smart groups, you have to, let's see, so let's go to smart groups and say new smart group, add trait, and if you do birthday, you can say during month, then you can select a month. Oh, wait. Right, right. Okay. So like instead of having to say March, this is June. So instead of having one that is set for May, save it, and then June comes around, I have to go in and edit it, and then say June, and then save it, and then when July comes around, select July and click and save it. What Donna is saying, hey, could you just have current month or upcoming month? And that's on our list of things to discuss and to figure out. So we'll add your feedback in along with other people who've suggested that, and we're looking to see if we can do that. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Nirada. I'm still having a hard time saying it, but thank you. Really appreciate it. Yes, we are also looking at that. Todd said, for the future, would it be possible to keep the column headers frozen at the top of the screen when scrolling? So I'll pass that on to the team as well. That keeping the column headers at the top help you understand, what's in those columns. So okay, and right now I have a good amount of material to cover for this webinar, but if any ideas for the upcoming webinar, post that in the follow-up notes at the end that you'll be asked about the webinar, and then that will help me determine what to discuss 3 months from now. So that would be, I want to say September. So, but if you guys don't have any other questions, I will sign off and I guess we'll head to lunch. But thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And if you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you. All right, for Taylor Brown, this is Rod Kiles. We are signing off. Thanks, everyone.